Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely stream deck. For more information about the stream deck, the link is in the description below.
Good evening everyone and welcome to round 11 of the AOR Hype Season 20 PCF1 League. We are here at the Marina Bay Street Circuit here on the streets of Singapore for F1's night race. The only race that starts and ends in pitch black conditions, and it makes for a spectacle under the light. A very different circuit to the one the drivers experienced last week at the Italian Grand Prix. Double the corners, in fact, compared to Monza, making for a very tricky track to get right. 31 laps as well, making it the longest race on the calendar, clocking in at around an hour, give or take a few minutes, if we get a safety car, which, given the fact we're on one of the most difficult circuits on the calendar, is a high likelihood, and we have seen it time and time again in the past. My name is James Costello, and I'm glad to be back in the commentary box finally. Joining me, of course, is my partner in crime, Jens. Jens, welcome back. Well, it's been a bit of a welcome back with both of us to the F1 commentary box, as we haven't commentated. Well, this is the first commentary for 2021 for us. But yeah, let's hope for an exciting race.
Yeah, certainly back after a small Christmas and New Year's break. Back in the commentary box once again. Hoping to get an exciting race here at Singapore around the Marina Bay Street Circuit. And let's just jump straight down onto the track and see how the drivers are faring. Of course, with the Marina Bay Street Circuit, one of the longest races, or the longest race on the calendar. And very tricky track as well, with the barriers very close to the drivers, just waiting to pounce on any mistakes the drivers make.
Yeah, 23 turns on this circuit, the most of any F1 circuit on this calendar especially. So yeah, it's very, very difficult circuit to master, and obviously the qualifying, well, we'll see who will be able to master it or who will falter. In this 18 minutes, we have 11 drivers for tonight. Importantly, though, we have Tom and we have Paris, the two in the hunt, you could say, for the championship. Paris is on a monster streak at the moment with, would have been 4 wins in the last 6 races, which is quite the mighty feat, which has brought the gap down in the championship to Tom. It's just 11 points. Failure in third, it was 62 points back, so we have got a fair ways to go in the championship. Still 7 rounds to go, including this one. But you can imagine it will be a battle between Tom and Paris for the championship. And thankfully, both of them are here. And, well, we'll see how these two perform. I'm not really sure how Tom fares at Singapore or Paris, for that matter. But, well, Tom's on his first flying lap. And Paris is just coming out of the pits now. So hopefully in a few moments' time, we'll be able to see first indication from not just these two drivers, but for the other 9 as well.
Yeah, of course, looking at the championship standings right there, we've seen that Tom has an immense consistency, getting on the podium in 7 out of the 10 completed races. But he's only gotten himself 1 win, and then you have Paris, who's fallen off the podium a couple of times, but then when he's on there, he gets either a win or he got his 2nd place at Silverstone. So both of them doing very well, and it's shown with only 11 points between them in the championship. And now we're seeing Tom coming around on his first flying lap. Let's see what he'll be able to perform just here at the beginning. See, Brownie, the first driver to cross the line, a 134 or 134.2, and then Milbert coming over with 133.4 very quickly after, and FK Gaming slotting in right in the middle there. But Tom, will he be able to challenge any of these two drivers? Let's see, coming through the final two corners, taken almost flat out up to the line. It was a 33.8, but his lap time did get invalidated, so maybe he went wide or had a small cut somewhere, but nonetheless mixing himself up there a bit if he can get it clean.
Yeah, he invalidated on the final two corners, which is definitely the least ideal place to get that turn validated, and he has to go another lap around the circuit, and assuming he's pushing again, no, he's actually backed off. Little ERS left for him. Paris is starting his first flying lap, as is Warren in the other Red Bull. But yeah, Tom, the only driver of the ones who completed a lap, who didn't, got his own validated and therefore didn't set a lap time. But yeah, as it stands, Christian with the 1:33.3 is on provisional pole. Then two drivers separated by just 4/1000ths of a second, with Padlo, Futas and Scrippy in P2 and P3. Scrippy up on the back of his first win at the Italian Grand Prix, and that's a very mighty effort in this first banker lap. Krysik's P4, FK Gaming P5, and Brownie and Michael Sinitzer are in the 34s. A little ways off, and Paris has also got his lap time validated, interestingly, and he's coming into sector 2 now, so obviously he must have maybe got it invalidated in the first couple of corners. It is very tricky to get 1, 2 and 3 perfect, and obviously running a little bit wide or cutting the corner a little bit obviously isn't going to help your efforts. Paris, we'll see if he actually finishes his lap. It'll be interesting to see as he makes his way around. I know, I thought like he's going to dart into the pits, and he does, so he didn't set lap time, neither did Warren. So yeah, Paris and Tom, both championship contenders, under a little bit more pressure than they would have hoped. No banker lap times yet, and there's still a long way to go in this qualifying session, not even halfway through.
Currently, with just about 11 minutes to go, we only really have one driver out on track who's going to show us anything really, and that is Failer, starting his first flying lap, coming out a bit later than others, with a couple of drivers coming out of the pits now for their second attempt. Failer only coming around for his first, so clearly some tyre strategy coming into play already, even though we're only in qualifying. Although the drivers will not have to think too much about it, because we will have to restart the lobby to get the positions all right. But he's doing well already. Purple in sector 1, and into sector 2 doing well already. Still there, coming through nicely through one of the many 90-degree corners, or almost 90-degree corners on the circuit, down to the Anderson Bridge. Now he comes, a tricky part of the track, that blind right-hander where it's ever so easy to clip the inside wall on the right-hand side and just completely lose your tyre and be out of either qualifying or the Grand Prix. So through the second of 3 DRS zones, and he wasn't purple in the second sector, but still went well through there. And now into the third one, through those 90-degree corners, through those chicanes that they almost are, almost like the swimming pool section at Monaco, just a bit more space here. And then into the final 2 corners he comes, the double left-hander, try not to cut on the inside or go too wide, opens the DRS over the line, a 1:33.2 provisional pole position for Jan Failer with just about 9.5 minutes to go.
He's been very quick in qualifying as Failer as of late, and that was a mighty effort. Put himself just under a tenth ahead of Christian, and that could be the difference. Obviously everyone using the soft compound tyres, although the predicted strategy will be a medium hard, you'd imagine, given the really strict tyre degradation levels at such a street circuits. But yeah, they can absolutely abuse these tyres as much as they want, and Failer using that to full effect. Provisional pole at the moment, but it is very close, and given the fact that this circuit is so long, just finding a few tenths or a few hundredths isn't out of the question for Christian or Padlo Futters or Scrippy, and of course Paris, Warren and Tom all yet to set laps. Three very, very quick drivers, obviously making up first and second in the championship, and Warren down in 10th, unfortunately. Hasn't had the season he would have had in mind. A bit too many DNFs for his liking, you'd imagine, as he actually invalidates his attempt going through the first sector, so that's not ideal for him, given the fact that there are 8 minutes to go and he still hasn't got a lap time on the board. But his teammate will hope to fare well, as will Tom. Tom has gone purple through the first sector, exactly what Failer did, and obviously we see where Failer stands, provisional pole at the moment. Paris did a very solid middle sector as well, only about 500 or so off what Tom did as he makes his way into the hairpin and onto the Anderson Bridge and activates DRS, the third DRS zone on this circuit, which will hopefully improve or reduce the amount of, improve the lack of overtaking that happens, or that can happen at such a circuit, as Paris makes his way underneath the grandstand now, and only a few more corners to go as his yellow flags somewhere in the circuit, which have been cleared now, thankfully. Paris now making his way through 19, 20, and now into 21, 22, and 23. Let's see what lap time it will be. It is a 1:33.153, and that is provisional pole. What can Tom do in response? A 33.8. 33.5, I should say. The time board's glitched a little bit there. I thought it got another lap time validated, but no, it didn't. But that's only P7. Is actually Padlo Futters dips into the 1:32s. That is a very, very good lap time from the AlphaTauri driver. 2.5 tenths up on Paris' attempt. And that is a very gap for the time being for the AlphaTauri driver. But yeah, Tom down in P7. That's not really the time he would have had in mind, but it's his banker lap time, and obviously to the likes of Padlo Futters and Scrippy now, who goes into P2, how much time they've gained on their second attempt. Tom will be hoping to do the same.
Yeah, for that second and possibly third attempt if you were out early, it is where you'll see the fastest lap times come out. The track will be up to temperature and the grip will be at its best, and it's where we've seen lap times before just tumble all the way to the quickest lap times we've seen in the history, and with 5.5 minutes to go, most of the drivers coming into the pits to just get the fuel right for their final attempt, just sitting in the pits there waiting to go out. Some coming out a bit earlier than others, maybe trying to get a jump on those, not wanting to get caught in traffic, whilst others wanting to get more than one attempt in. And a couple of those drivers are Brownie and Jan Failer. Failer, who of course did go fastest on his first attempt, has been put down to 5th place now with a 3.6 tenths gap up to Padlo Futters on provisional pole position. Brownie down in 10th with a 1.2 second gap up to provisional pole position. So both of them will be hoping to improve in their final attempt now with 4.5 seconds to go, or minutes to go.
Yeah, Failer he's obviously going flat out here, but it's interesting to see that he's opted to go out earlier when the track grip won't be at its optimal coming into the final few minutes. But obviously we'll have the clean air and we'll have basically no traffic, well, no traffic at all, on his way to finish this lap, you can imagine, as he's fractionally up through the second sector split. But that won't gain him any positions whatsoever. He needs to gain at least a few tenths as he actually backs out there coming into turn 16 and 17. So tank slapper there for failure, but thankfully, hopefully he has enough fuel. If he doesn't, I think he'll be able to come back into the pits, and that's exactly what he's done. So that's one of the benefits of going out early, is that he does obviously have another chance to set a lap time, and Brownie also is going for the same tactic, although in a more extravagant way, invalidating his lap time as he comes into the pits. That means we only have 2 drivers out at the moment, Kreisix and Michael Tinitzer. Kreisix is just started his final flying lap from the racing point, and he's 5.5 tenths off divisional pole at the moment. Smacks the wall there at turn 6, but obviously rearwards, so it obviously didn't really affect the car at all coming into Raffles Boulevard, and he's 3 tenths down. So that obviously it did affect him in terms of time, but the car's still fine. We'll have to see if he can make that time up at this circuit, and we're starting to see most of the drivers now coming out for their final attempts. Paris, provisional poleman Padlo Futes is also out there. So yeah, 2.5 minutes to go, and well, Padlo Futes on provisional pole. I don't think he's had a pole position so far this season. No, he hasn't. So we'll be interested to see if he can convert this. But he's got a lot of challenges. So let's see how this final few minutes unfold.
2 minutes and 5 seconds to go. Everyone is out on track or coming out of the pit lane right now. Everyone is going to be trying their hardest to get on that pole position. One of the first drivers who will give a showing is Kreisix, coming across the line, improving a bit, but only good enough for 6th place. I don't know if he's going again or what. Then there'll be Michael Tinitzer, hasn't validated his lap time, but he might want to shoot again. He's gone down to Serial S, so he's most likely hoping he can come round for another crack at it. Then the first driver who will be crossing the line when the checkered flag falls, that will be Tom. He's coming around to start his lap time. He will be the first of the drivers who we think will be up there at the front come the end of qualifying, although every single driver here could very well be up there in the next minute or so. Tom going nicely through the first 3 corners there, then into turn number 5, on to the first DRS zone, opens it nicely there. Then there's that small kink of turn number 6, negotiating that without a problem. Going purple in sector 1, and then into sector 2, having a bit of a skirmish exit of turn number 7, turn 8 doing nicely, and turn 9 as well. Then it's a quick dash down to turn number 10, that left-hander for going all the way left to go right and onto the Anderson Bridge. Will he come through there without a problem? Yes, he will. Then it's on to the second DRS straight. That back straight there, that newly added DRS zone, wasn't there a couple of years ago. Into the third sector, didn't go purple in sector 2, although there was an improvement on his original time. Into the final sector, into those chicane-like areas before coming under the grandstand. You can see that Ferris wheel flashing in the distance into the final parts of the track. He'll be crossing the DRS detection point now, then he'll come through the double left-hander, he'll open the DRS now, and across the line he goes, new provisional pole position. The next driver to cross the line will be Paris, but he has invalidated his lap time as the checker flag has fallen. Then it's Michael Tinitzer, goes 8th fastest. After that, it will be Padlo Futes now through the final couple of corners, goes new provisional fastest. Then it'll be Warren across the line. Doesn't set a lap time. I think it might have gotten invalidated. Then it's FK Gaming. 6th fastest he goes. Then it will be Brownie down in 10th place. He is improving on his original lap time. He has gone under the grandstand and he's coming into the final couple of corners, passing the detection point, coming into the double left-hander. He will be opening the DRS and comes across the line. Improvement, but only good enough for 10th. Jan Fehler went into 3rd, Christian into 4th, and then the final driver will be Scrippy, but his lap time has been invalidated, so it will be Pandlo Futa starting on pole position with 1:32.7.
Wow, that was a very impressive lap time from Padlo Fuentes to snatch pole back after what I thought Tom with a qualifying lap of the qualifying, which was the lap of the qualifying, to jump from 7th to 2nd, but no, Padlo Fuentes had other answers. Fail jumping up to 3rd, interesting, but a lot of invalid lap times. Christian, Scrippy, Paris, and Warren didn't even set a lap time in the end. Not that it will matter, of course. Everyone does get a fresh set of tyres, but yeah, unsure on his pace. Or we could check the race director and see what lap times he actually did in the end. He did a 1:33.4, 1:32.9, and a 1:32.8. So he would have found himself near enough at the front, but obviously getting his lap time validated is obviously the thing you want to avoid the most in qualifying, and he unfortunately wasn't able to do so. He's going to start last out of the 11 to make it to the grid. But yeah, Padlo Fuentes' first pole position of the season, and I'm going to say very well deserved, and he's found the right place to do it. Singapore, quite a difficult circuit to overtake. Track position can be key here, but obviously Tom's a rocket at the start, and maybe Tom's thinking about the championship already. Maybe he might be a little bit conservative, knowing that Paris is starting down in P6. Padlo Fuentes has a great chance to get his first win of the season here.
Yeah, he might very well do it come the race. But now we'll go on a short break. We need to get a new session made, and we need to just get the grid in order. And while we wait, we'll go on a short break. So get something to drink. It's going to be a long race coming up, and we hope to see you after the break. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the race. We're here for the 31 lap race, and it's looking like it's going to be a bit wet. Unsurprisingly, I will say, for the Singapore Grand Prix, it has been seen many times before that a Grand Prix has been spiced up by a bit of water from the heavens above, and it looks like this race is no exception. But the drivers will still have to take on the 23 turn circuit, and it's going to be interesting to see who will come out on top. Pablo Futas qualified on pole position, but he'll have Tom 97 right behind him.
My game may have crashed, apologies. I'm joining back now. Hopefully I'll be able to make the start. Because it promises to be quite an interesting start. I mean, is it wet? I can't really... I can't see.
Yeah, it is intermediate conditions as the drivers are lining up on the grid here. You can just see them slowly following their way, tentatively coming in to turn number 1. And you can see everyone looks to be on the intermediate. Yes, everyone is on the intermediate tyre. So we might be seeing dry conditions in the Grand Prix, although with the rain falling like it is, I wouldn't be surprised to see some full wets being used at some point during the Grand Prix. But that is all to come later in the race and to see later. There's of course 31 laps as mentioned, so a lot of things can still happen in this Grand Prix. Pablo Futas and Tom 97 on the first row, then Jan Fehler and Christian Sendel on the second, Scrippy and Paris on the third, FK Gaming and Quisix on the fourth, Michael Tinitza and Brownie on the fifth row, and then we had Warren qualified last with no time, and Josh was able to join us for the race. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join qualifying for some reason or another, but he is now here for the race, and it's going to be exciting to see what these 12 drivers will be able to do in the race.
Yeah, no idea how this is going to go, to be honest. Last time we had a wet start at Singapore was in 2017, and we all know what happened then. That will get a repeat of that tonight, but if we do, that's probably not a good thing, because that'll reduce the numbers to about 6 or 7, which I don't think we're going to want to see 31 laps of that. But hopefully, we can get through the first lap as unscathed as possible, but with a few elements of excitement, which was probably what is the best part of the rain. It brings the unpredictability and brings the excitement, and hopefully they will be added to make this race one to remember. The second race of 2021, hopefully it will be a cracker. Pablo Futas will be looking to get his first win of the season. Tom looking to get his second win of the season and extend that championship gap that has been ever closing for the past few races. Paris under a little bit of pressure, starting further down than he would have wanted. Let's see. 31 laps ahead of us for the Singapore Grand Prix F1's night race, and when the 5 red lights go out, we will have round 11 underway. Let's see who gets the best start at the front two. It looks like Thomas got the better launch initially. Down towards turn 1. Can he take the lead? Look at Jan Fehler getting involved in the action there. There they go, side by side. Go Pablo Futas and Tom. Tom with the inside line through turn 3. But I think Pablo Futas has done a good enough job to keep that P1 at bay as they now go wheel to wheel. Down to turn 5. They still run side by side. Unbelievably. No contact whatsoever. Paris up to third already. Super start for the Red Bull. And Tom, crucially, has got that P1 off Pablo Futas. The 2 championship contenders. 1 for Tom. P3 for Paris. Pablo Futas down into P2. Any other position changes? Yeah, Fehler down to P4, Scrippy P5, Christian P6, FK Gaming battling away with Michael Tinitza, and Kryzik's going word to word with Warren. Brownie down in 11th, Josh remains in 12th. What a super start there for Paris, up to P3 already, and already on the right at the back of Padlo Futis as Tom tries to pull away.
Yeah, Tom already doing quite well to pull away, almost a second down to Padlo Futis already, and Padlo Futis having to look in his mirrors, or what he can see out of his mirrors, instead of looking ahead to Tom. Paris right behind there, just looming in the shadows. He is a bit too far behind to make any moves for now, and it looks like that gap is quite stable around the 5/10ths at least for now. But let's see in the coming laps. Of course, there won't be any DRS, but there are still straights where you can use slipstream, rich mix, and overtake. And I wouldn't be surprised if Paris was able to go for the move on the next lap, if not within 2 laps. But it looks like the gap has settled actually, with about 1.1 second up to Tom and a second down to Paris behind. So these 3 drivers at the front doing it nicely to stay in the positions that they've gotten in. Tom had a great start up into P1. Then we had Paris jumping 3 positions up, going up into 3rd place. And the driver with the worst start was Christian, down in 6th place. He lost 2 positions, and he is right behind Scrippy, and he has Kryzik's right behind him. So a bit of a train forming down there as the timing towers had a bit of disco fun whilst we're waiting for any battles to properly develop.
Yeah, Ferrari and Wentworth Assault Singapore don't usually mix. Thankfully for Christian though, he only lost 2 positions, and he might be able to gain one very soon indeed, because he's right on the tail of the Mercedes of Scrippy, who looks to be struggling. But then again, I think everyone out there is struggling to some extent. I doubt this is the condition the drivers thought they would be facing a few hours ago, but they have to be prepared. And it looks like Tom might have put that workload of the practice in, because he is still charging the field, but Padlo Futis is still keeping that gap at a constant second, although it looks like it might have been reduced. I don't think the time boards are updating to what we... Yeah, they definitely aren't updating, because I don't think Padlo Futis is a second back from Tom. So hopefully when they cross the line to start lap 3? 4?
Starting lap 3.
I think they're starting lap 3, yeah, so hopefully, yeah, there we go, the time boards have sorted themselves out, and now the gap is now 7/10ths, and Paris is now the one falling back. Now 1.3 seconds further behind, as all the gap starts to stabilise, and only a few drivers are very close to the driver in front. I mean, there's no DRS, of course, which obviously will be used, or would have been used to greatly affect the amount of overtaking, but the drivers are going to have to hard fought this out, and if they want to get moves done, they're going to have to work for it and hope. Well, they're going to have to hope for a mistake from the driver they're battling, but in the case of Padlo Futis, hoping for a mistake from Tom isn't really. Well, it's not really what Tom does, to be honest. As you mentioned at the start, he's so consistent. Regardless of the fact he's only won 1 race this season, he hasn't finished lower than 5th, so it's looking good so far, but still 28 laps more to go, and who knows how long this weather condition is going to last, whether it'll go even wetter and we'll have to use the wet tyres, or whether it'll lighten up a little bit and we'll see some dry running. Got a long time for the weather to make its mind up. Obviously the drivers have to cope with whatever takes place.
Yeah, of course, the weather always has a mind of its own. You can't control it in any way, shape or form. So the rain will fall for however long it wants to, and it's not looking like it's clearing up at all here in the first couple of laps, and it's not looking like it'll clear itself up anytime soon. I don't think we'll be seeing wet weather or full wet running at any point soon, but I don't think we're going to see dry running anytime soon either. So the drivers will have to make do with this for at least a couple more laps before they'll even begin to think about doing something else. And currently most of them just sitting behind, hoping for the driver in front to make a mistake without making a mistake of their own. A couple of gaps are within that second, but of course it doesn't really mean too much since there isn't that DRS that you can capitalize off when you're within that second. But of course there is still the slipstream, the rich mix and the ERS that you can use on the straights, something you wouldn't want to use out of the corners, especially not in these conditions. But here on lap number 4, no one really wanting to go for those moves, and that is quite understandable since already in the dry conditions it is a bit dangerous to go for the moves here around Singapore, and it's even worse in the wet conditions. So the drivers thinking tactically, hoping for that mistake from the driver ahead instead of forcing themselves out into an attack.
Yeah, both racing points look most likely to make a move if they do decide to. Kryzik's right behind Michael Timitzer, who's holding himself, Kryzik's and Warren up a tad bit, and then further behind we have Brownie and Josh. Just behind, Josh hasn't been able to make any progress in the back of the grid, understandably. No idea how much practice he's put into it. He just turned up at the latest moment and was definitely not expecting the wet weather, so he's coping alright for the time being, but obviously not making any places up isn't the most ideal thing. But yeah, still a long way to go in this race. Lap 5, of course, and Pablo Fuentes is keeping Tom at bay. He's making sure he's there ever so often. The top 4 have really set off. Scrippy and the rest just cannot. Well, Scrippy in fact just cannot keep up the pace of the top 4. He's 3 seconds off Failer, with a second off Parrot, who's a second and a half off the leading pair. So really looks like a full-way fight at the moment. But obviously, if anyone makes a mistake, it could be game over for them, or they could just lose a heap of time. So that's what the drivers have got to focus on, just keeping within the limits and trying to not make any mistakes, and then, well, try and also stay with your opponent, or if you're Tom's case, try and pull away. But that's just not happening for the championship leader at the moment. Pablo Fuentes is right there and has no intention at the moment of letting Tom ease off a little bit. Obviously Paris lurking behind. He'll obviously be hoping for the AlphaTauri car. Oh, well, that's penalty. That's the first penalty of the evening going to Pablo Fuentes. Already on lap 5. We haven't even mentioned the track limits and whatnot. As Michael Timitzer now gets one, as does Warren. Wow. So the warnings are starting to pile up. Pablo Fuentes is the first of the leading drivers to get a penalty, but we'll focus that more on that later in the race, as that obviously won't be a factor right now, unless drivers get 5-second penalties, which have to serve in the pits. Pit stops, well, will they happen in this race? You'd imagine there will be at least one pit stop, but or 2. Wet intermediates again. Still a lot for the unknown. As of now, we're just waiting on someone to make a mistake, really, or the weather to just decide what's next, really. I mean, for Pete's sake, it snowed where I live, so anything could happen, really. So it looks like Josh actually might go for a move on Brownie, but no, Dan Ruffles Boulevard, he decides against it. So I don't think we've had any moves since the opening lap. We've just seen the drivers just go toe to toe, and none of them making mistakes so far, and that's What you'd expect, given the fact this is the top split on PC, but yeah, no one's even made a crack of an error so far, so we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next few laps.
Yeah, of course, just running around in these conditions, you're mostly just following those red flashing lights of the cars in front. You aren't really focusing too much on raw speed. Although saying that, Josh, he is thinking of that move on Brownie, but again, playing it safe, just sitting behind, not wanting to do anything stupid that could lose him any front wing or further time. Down in 12th and last place he is. He has 2 more places to join before he gets within the points. And the smartest thing to do, if you know a bit about how the weather will turn out, as the drivers of course do, they can see that on the strategy screen at the beginning. So if they know that there is dry weather coming, they might think that they just want to sit behind, not really risk anything here in the opening stages of the Grand Prix, and then come the end or the latter stages when it maybe dries up, they can strap on a set of mediums, and that's when things really go down in terms of the overtaking and the battling. But for now, most of the drivers just sitting behind each other, not wanting to make a mistake, not wanting to risk any damage at all.
Oh, Paris! He's in the wall at turn 7.
Oh yes, he is.
Or turn 8.
He has gone more or less straight there. He's tried to take the corner, and oh my, it looks like his game has glitched out. That thing where it keeps turning to one direction. Oh my, looks like he's stuck in the wall for a bit. Let's hope he can get going again before he gets disqualified, because if he's stuck there completely, interesting thing. Oh, looks like he's running again? Possibly running again. However, he is all the way down in 12th place with a substantial amount of front wing damage now. In that corner, it looked like he had tried taking it and then gone a bit too wide and then just hit the barrier and lost the entire part of his, at least, left side front wing. He'll have to come into the pits now for a front wing change and at least another set of the intermediate tyres, and this completely destroys his chances for that podium finish, at least for now. He has a big gap up to Josh and will have an even bigger one if he decides to pit. No, he continues on.
He's left the session actually. I don't know if you know captured that.
Oh, yeah, he has. That is possibly a disconnect there as well. Very unfortunate for Paris. He was doing well up in 3rd place, hanging on to Pablo Futas and Tom, with the failure right behind him, but unfortunately things just didn't turn out for him this evening, at least not for now. We're 8 laps into the race and he's not in the lobby anymore.
Yeah, the first to crumble, out of everyone, I wouldn't have expected Paris. It's in the form of his life, and yeah, one small mistake, and obviously he could have kept going, but decided against it, and yeah, out of the race, and he won't be scoring any points today, and that's even brighter news for Tom, added to the fact that he's now pulling away from Pablo Futas, bit by bit. Obviously, Pablo Futas with that penalty, of course. Tom could leave this race being 36 points clear, maybe even 37 points if he nicks fast lap as well. Now completely change the events of the championship and swing it right back into Tom's favour. But obviously Tom has to finish this race as well. But look at that, a new fastest lap. Now the gap is 2 seconds between himself and Pablo Futas. So he's really starting to push now, is Tom. Maybe we're starting to see the conditions get a little bit better I'm not sure. I mean, this would be the time where we would look up to the skies and see what the clouds are doing, but it's completely pitch black, so we're hopeless to see what the weather's doing. After Gaming coming in to put more intermediate tyres on and the front wing change.
Yeah.
So no indication of if the weather is changing or not. That was just a front wing change primarily. He's still carrying on though. Then he'll be down in P12, and yeah, I don't know where he picked that front wing damage up. You could probably make an explain for every single corner on the circuit. Corners with that tyre, and you can make a mistake at any moment. But yeah, Tom, his teammate, the one setting the pace at the moment. And yeah, stretching his lead out in front to 2.5 seconds now as we approach the third race distance.
Of course, very easy to make mistakes, not just on the outside with the walls, but also on the inside and cutting the corner a bit too much. Some drivers have fallen fast to that. We have Pablo Futas, Michael Tanitsa, Warren and Brownie, all with penalties. Michael Tanitsa with 6 seconds, he's gotten himself 2 penalties already. So he's very much on track to try and beat his record for this season, which I believe is 29 seconds. Did that earlier this season. But 6 seconds already, matching with the position he is in as well. 9 seconds behind Christian, and with Prix right behind him, Prix and Warren right behind him, having a small train there, and then not too far back he has Brownie and Josh. So very much a small train forming for 6th place that I'm sure we'll see some battling for once the conditions improve, and they are improving a bit. The rain isn't falling quite as heavily as it did earlier, I can confirm that. But of course, normally when we look to the skies above, we would see that the overcast conditions would be changing to more and more blue patches, and then at least the lighter sky, and then some blue patches emerging. Whilst here we won't even be seeing the stars if it dries up completely due to the amount of lights that are shined on the circuit. So very much a guessing game for us commentators, but I am not seeing the same amount of drops I saw earlier in the Grand Prix. So once it stops, we'll maybe see a lap or 2, maybe even 3 for some drivers before they feel that the track is ready for the dry tyres. So we won't be seeing a change before at least lap 13.
Yeah.
And that's when we see the real battling go down, as the DRS will get enabled as well.
Yeah, we're still a ways off. There's still way too much water pouring down the circuit, but it is getting better, and we can see that evidently through the lap times. Not just Tom getting quicker, but pretty much everyone else. Although Tom is going quicker than everyone else. He is the quickest man on the circuit at the moment. Although Pablo Futas responds with a 1:53.8 to reduce that gap a little bit to Tom. But saying that, it went down to what, 2.8 to 2.6. So yeah, it really didn't do much in the grand scheme of things. But if he carries on doing that, and he has a good pit stop when it eventually goes to dry, and Tom doesn't have a good pit stop, then Tom is not out of threat yet from Pablo Futas, even with his losing a time penalty. Speaking of 3 seconds, it's a gap between himself and Failer, who is seemingly dropping off the tail of them two, and is slowly starting to fall into the clutches of Scroopy and Christian, who have been minding their own business, really, just in their own race. Whilst everyone else is just gangled up between each other. A good example of that being Michael Tenetzer just really holding up Kryzik's Warren, Brownie, and Josh, of course. And then Elgato Gaming, who did set the fast lap of the Grand Prix, primarily due to the fact he's got fresh tyres, and he's still going quite quick out there, down in P11. Whilst his teammate still leads. you start to see more dry patches on the track. So a few laps away, but I mean, someone might make decisions to gamble early. That would be Tom or Pablo Fuentes or really anyone in the top 5. But yeah, you'll have to wait and find out. Not that much time left before the dry running, and it'll be interesting to see how that phases out. Really, see if Tom can keep that lead, which he's had ever since lap 1, and Pablo Fuentes still keeping him there, but 2.5 seconds. The gap still is as on lap 12 at the moment, and not that much happening on track at the moment. Just waiting for the crossover period, and I don't think we're that far away from it.
No, it is looking like this drying up a bit, and if I'm not mistaken, it could very well be due to the lighting conditions, but it looks like the rain might have stopped, and here comes Cry6 for 6th place, finally able to go for that move down the inside of Michael Tanitsa. Will Warren follow through as well? Let's see. It doesn't look like it for now, but there, Cry6 finally tired of seeing that Sophia rear wing of the Williams, and just nipping it down the inside into, or after that first long straight, and into 6th place he goes. He now has a 13.4 second gap. He'll have to catch up if he wants to get into the fight for any podium positions, but Cry6 doing well there in that move, not hindering himself too much, and Warren was almost able to just snip past as well, up to 7th place, but no, he is still in 8th for now, still behind Michael Tanitsa, still being held up here in the lower point scoring positions as we are approaching that crossover point slowly. Maybe the likes of Warren and Brownie, maybe even Josh, will go for that early gamble to gain some time on the drivers ahead. Let's see as they're coming on to the start-finish straight. Now it looks like everyone is staying out on track, which is unsurprising. It's still quite wet, although you are seeing Warren here having to go offline to keep the cool in the tyres, them overheating a bit due to it being dry on the racing line, and them having to need the water to cool down. And wouldn't be surprised if any drivers came in on this lap, maybe next lap, or at least it's getting close to that dry tyre time. And I would have my guess and say that most of the drivers will at least be switching on to a medium tyre, and the first driver to come into the pits is FK Gaming, gone in for a set of hard tyres on his hand. He's now down in last place, even behind Paris. So now the whole field is in an Alfa Romeo sandwich. Tom still leading the way, FK Gaming now at the rear, and let's see as Tom is approaching the pit lane. At least the whole front of the field is as well, and I'm not seeing as much spray coming from those intermediate tyres, so let's see if anyone decides to come into the pits on this lap. Tom carries on, same does Pablo Fuentes. Failer decides to come into the pits, Scrippy into the pits, Christian into the pits. What about Cry6 from 6th place? Of course, he still has got that big gap up to the drivers in front of him. Maybe he will come in and mirror them on this lap. Yes, he will. Michael Tanitsa behind, carrying on. Warren into the pits, Brownie into the pits, Josh into the pits, and I'm not quite sure what Paris's car will be doing at the back.
What, just on board FA Gaming, it's like going on a skate rink. He is really finding those hard tyres to handle. Tough to handle. DRS has now been enabled, so obviously the track itself, or the game itself, thinks it is time for the dry tyres. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, maybe the hard tyres isn't the best bet, given the fact they take a long time to warm up, and given the fact that there is very little grip. As if Kimi now gets a 3-second time penalty and to add insult to injury. But as you look at the tyres that everyone has decided to go on to, Failer on the hard, Scrippy on the mediums, and look at how quick Scrippy looks compared to the McLaren. Let's see if he can get past sooner rather than later. Christian on the hards, Kreisdick's on the hards, Warren on the mediums, as is Brownie, and Josh went onto the hards as well. You'd assume Tom, Paolo Futas and Michael Stenitzer will all come into the pits on this lap. Although Tom has been known for doing some audacious strategy attempts, going much longer indeed, but no. He decides now is the time is right.
Here comes Scrippy, trying his way down the inside of Jan Failer after that second DRS zone, but was unable to do so. Now the switchback move in the subsequent corner into turn number 16. Now under the grandstand, they'll go side by side there. The attendees over there really must love that view of those cars side by side into that section. Scrippy gets 4th place there. You can see Failer still struggling there to get the grip and the heat into those hard tyres. As you see, Tom and Padlo Futas in the pits, Michael Tanitza as well. Tom and Padlo Futas both on the hard tyres there. Oh, it was close between Scrippy and Norbert there as he came out of the pit lane, but he goes into 3rd place. Scrippy takes 2nd. Tom still comfortably in the lead, although on a set of hard tyres, the tyre that a couple of the drivers have been struggling on already. But let's see in the next couple of laps what will happen. All the drivers now on the dry tyre, most of them on the hard tyre, but a couple of them on the medium tyre, with a couple of them building up penalties as well. But we're on lap number 15 out of 31, so plenty of things can still happen in this race. And with the drivers on the dry tyres now, I'm sure that we'll begin to see some battling start to form out.
Scrippy is absolutely flying on his tyres, on his mediums, and Christian isn't doing too bad himself. It was crucial that the Mercedes got ahead of Padlo Futas if he wanted to challenge Tom, and given the fact he's purple through 1st and 2nd sector, it gives us an impression that I think, yeah, he is going to catch up with Tom, but obviously the hards will, without question, make it to the end. Is whether the mediums can. He's going to have to go half race distance with those medium tyres. It's going to be a stretch, but Scrippy may be able to do it. He's going to really struggle towards the end, but if he can get the move done on Tom quickly enough and build a gap and hope for Tom to get, well, Tom somehow to lose time and get caught up in battling with Padlo Futas behind. But given how impressive Tom has been so far in this Grand Prix, I don't see that happening. But you know, Scrippy reducing that gap now, and of course now we have DRS as well to hopefully improve the amount of overtaking, which we'll probably see in the next few laps, whether Scrippy can get past Tom or Christian can get past Failer as well in the battle for P4 and 5. Elsewhere, there's a bit of a widespread, you know, that gap we had, or that train we had with Michael Stenitzer. He's now on the back of this train in quotation marks because they're all spread out quite significantly. Stenitzer is now 6 seconds behind Josh, who's 3 seconds behind Brownie, who's 3 seconds behind Kreisdick, who's 3 seconds behind Warren. So that's that train has now been disformed, and Warren now also pushing on his set of medium tyres. But yeah, it's all about the battle for the lead of the Grand Prix, with Tom under a heap of pressure from Scrippy behind, who's really set the timing sheets alight. And with DRS now, see if he'll be able to get past. Not into turn 1, but that's not really the primary overtaking spot. It's down Rendtorff Boulevard down to turn 7, just where the prime source of overtaking usually occurs around Singapore. Will we see an addition +1 to that tonight? Scrippy with the RS gets close, but Tom has that covered into the braking zone of turn 7. Needs to be a little bit closer. Does the Mercedes driver. What about Christian? He's a bit too far behind as well to get past Failer. So the hard tyres are starting to work now, when initially I thought it might have been a bad idea. As F Gaming, I think, coming into the pits. He is, and he's retiring from the session, interestingly. I wonder if that's just a give up one where he's really out of this race. He has got wing damage as well, so that's probably the nail in the coffin, and that's why he decided to retire. So we pretty much have our non-point scorers being Paris and FK Gaming, unfortunately. But let's see how the other 10 drivers still in this race, and let's see how the points are offered. We've still got a long way to go in this race, still 15 laps, or 14 laps from across the line. So yeah, it's still got a lot of unpredictability, and yeah, hopefully a lot more action to come in the second half of the race. For the first half, let's be honest, lacked it a little bit.
Yeah, of course, now with the DRS that has been enabled and the dry tyres now offering a bit more flexibility in terms of speed, I'm sure that it's now going to be the time we see the most overtaking. You can see here Scrippy within 5/10 of Tom and in that DRS zone, but just isn't close enough to go for the move. The same you can say about Christian on Jan Failer, but both drivers is there and about, close to get that move done. Although Scrippy is on the mediums, Tom on the hard tyres, whilst we have a fight between Failer and Christian on purely hard tyres, also from the same lap. So we can really see that these hard tyres are beginning to work. The drivers are getting the heat into them and getting them into that very important window. Whilst there was still a bit of water on the road, it was quite hard to get them up in the right temperature, but the second that dried out, you can just see the hard tyres getting into that optimal working window. You can just see the amount of speed that Tom has, even though Scrippy is right behind him on a set of better tyres. Now into the third sector, you see Scrippy is so close there, just 4 5/10 of a second, switching in that small gap and in that interval, and onto the start finish straight. You will have the DRS, but still he just isn't close enough. He's getting a bit hampered by the dirty air behind Tom, but I'm sure that if he just keeps within that small gap, then he'll be able to get past on one of the near straights. And talking about straights, they're going to come out on one of them now, and it's a closer gap than we've seen in the last couple of laps, but I'm not sure it is close enough to go for the move. What about Christian behind once they come around? I think it's the same story, although he is catching quite rapidly on Jan Failer. He's taken to the left hand side, going down the inside there, getting the move nicely done already, quickly through there, squeezing a bit. Then he just had the position, no worry at all. It was almost like Jan Failer wasn't even interested in defending there. He falls down into 5th place, and he'll now see Christian go a bit into the distance there. And he should watch out he doesn't lose him completely within the next couple of laps. Scrippy in front there with the DRS on Tom, approaching, but in the mirrors isn't close enough to go for a proper overtake.
That was very important for Christian to get that move done, because closing in behind is Warren, who is, just like Scrippy, very, very quick on his set of medium tyres. He's only 1.3 seconds back to Failer, and given how given how not resilient Failer was in defending against Christian, you'd imagine that Warren will be looking forward to getting close to Failer and getting rid of that DRS. But it's interesting. When I was on board with Scrippy down Raffles Boulevard, I think Tom actually gained time on Scrippy, even with DRS. So Tom must be using quite an unusual setup, because you'd expect downforce to be heavily inspiring your setup, but Tom's going for an aggressive setup with a low aero, you imagine, or something, to increase that top speed. Because Scrippy just can't get near him down the turn 7, and unfortunately, for the rest of the lap, it's pretty much, well, apart from a few instances, like down the Anderson Bridge, it's pretty much single file. Sector 3 is pretty much the definition of that. So, yeah, Tom is really doing a great job at keeping Scrippy at bay, and this is not doing any good for Scrippy's medium tyres, who will obviously be pushing stuck with the dirty air and losing traction a little bit more than he would have if he was just simply out in front and got ahead of Tom. But unfortunately, that isn't the case for the Mercedes driver, and he just has to stick behind Tom for now and hope that he can just get a good exit out of the last corner, turn 5, or maybe even the hairpin, to try and move, because it's going to take something at the moment. It's going to take not that. No, that's not going to help Scrippy at all in his bid to try and win the race. He's facing rearwards, born on the exit of turn 21, and that's pretty much his race over. Or maybe. He's going to come into the pits, and that is not what he wanted to have. That is music to Tom's ears. He is now 5 seconds in front of Pablo Fuentes, and any chance of Scrippy winning this Grand Prix, or pretty much anyone winning this Grand Prix apart from Tom, unless a miracle happens, have been absolutely shattered, just like the state of that Mercedes front wing.
Yeah, now down in the battle for P4, Warren just did the same move as Christian did a couple of laps ago. Down the first DRS straight there, having it wide open, and just nipping down the inside of Jan Fehler come the braking zone, having that position without much of a fight. So, I'm not quite sure what Jan Fehler's strategy in this race is, but he isn't really fighting these overtakes. He's simply just holding them off for a couple of laps and then letting them down the inside at once they go for the move. So he's fallen from 3rd down to 5th in the last couple of laps, and he's already lost the DRS on Warren now. So most of the battles have been neutralized, and especially the one for the lead with that small-ish mistake from Scrippy. So, whilst we're waiting for any battle to develop, we can just have a small look at the penalty screens here. Almost all the drivers, all except for Scrippy, Paris, Fehler, Christian and Tom, has penalties. From the top, we have Pablo Fuentes with 3 seconds. We have Warren with 6, Price with 3, Brownie with 6, Josh with 8, and then in 9th place, doing a good job there, Michael Tanitza with 15 seconds worth of penalties, almost losing the position to Scrippy if the checkered flag fell right now. 18.4 seconds down to him, and he just needs to be within 15 seconds if he can stay penalty-less, and then that 9th place is his, and he won't even have to move a finger.
Yeah, just looking at Michael Sinner's race director, it's like a bull laugh. That it's warning after warning after penalty after penalty. But he's like the Robert of season 16. You remember him? That's unfortunately something Michael hasn't really been able to improve on throughout this season, and obviously hopefully won't get disqualified. Some points in the bag will be a boost for him, you'd imagine. But 9th place at the moment for him. He's down the soft tyres, interestingly. So we'll see if he can maybe even grab the fastest lap and get an extra point on the board. We'll see if he can. The fastest lap at the moment is occupied by Warren, who has got a 1:36.9, which is 4 tenths quicker than Scrippy, who is second on that list. Although Scrippy might have a chance to nab it, considering the fact his race is pretty much over now, considering the fact he's down in 10th. And he's not. Interestingly, he's going back onto the same mediums that he spun with. Don't really know why he decided to do that. Maybe he wants to try and see if he could have got those tyres to the end. Obviously, he won't be pushing as hard as he would have if he was obviously fighting for the win, which he was a few laps ago before the calamity occurred. But his race is pretty much over, as is Michael Tinitz's. So it stands, Tom still leading, 4.9 seconds a gap now between himself and Padler Fuentes. Christian doing a very good job indeed, showing very good pace on those hard tyres. And obviously in original second place with Padler Fuentes' penalty. Warren, I think his medium tyres are starting to worsen a little bit. He hasn't been able, well, he's been able to clear failure, but hasn't been able to gain anything on Christian. So I think he's just trying to manage those tyres to the end, because, well, I don't think he wants to pit and then lose even more time. And given the fact he's already got penalties, 6 seconds it was, so he's already going to lose a few positions as a result. And then you have Kreisix and Brownie, who's the only driver within DRS range at the moment. And that's obviously a given, really. The fact he's on medium tyres compared to Kreisix's hards. Although he's been stuck behind the racing point for a few laps now, and just like Scrippy, hasn't been able to make a move. Let's hope the same fate doesn't befall him like it did for the Mercedes driver. But yeah, he can't get past Kreisix at the moment, and then Josh down in P8. He was not really had, well, he's had a pretty quiet race. Substituted in at the very last second, and yeah, 4 points won't be too shabby. Michael Tinitz's does get the fastest lap of the Grand Prix at the moment. We're just going to see if Scrippy decides to respond with that. But yeah, lap 24 with 31. We had a battle for the lead. It didn't really transpire into much. Tom has just been driving superbly. He's just hasn't made any mistakes, not in qualifying, or the only mistakes he did was in qualifying. He outdid a few of his lap times. Since then, he has been near flawless. Brownie now picks up another penalty for himself, as he's still trying to get close to Kreisix, but to no avail at the moment. Yeah, as I was saying with Tom, he's just been superb this race, and you know, he's only won one race this season, and you know, he's been very close on multiple occasions, lost races because of penalties, but I don't think anyone will be taking the win away from him today, and it'll be made even more sweeter given the fact that Paris is obviously, well, still in this race technically, but obviously it goes a lap down now on P11, no points for the Red Bull, so yeah, that gap of 11 points will be 36, which is, well, it'll be very hard to stop that with only 6 races to go, but you never know. Tom could have a race like Paris did, and Paris is today, and Paris could capitalise on that, so the championship isn't over just yet, certainly not, but this is definitely a major swing in the balance for, and definitely a major advantage for Tom, although he has to keep it clean for the last 6 laps to the Grand Prix. Don't want to jinx or anything, but yeah, it looks pretty certain that he'll be winning the Grand Prix. He's been absolutely amazing today, and no one really at the pace to contend with him. Padler Fuentes just hasn't been there. Ever since he got overtaken on lap 1, he was there or thereabouts in the opening stint on the intermediates, but on this dry stint, he just hasn't been able to keep the pace. If anything, Christian might be taking that second place officially. He already has it now, given the fact that Padler Fuentes has a penalty. But obviously, it looks like he might be able to take that position on track as well. Will the Ferrari driver? We'll have to wait and see, though. as we've seen a lot of drivers struggling to make moves to the DRS. We'll see if Christian can hopefully find it as easy as it was to get past Failer for Padlo Footer's sake, but he's a bit too far behind on this occasion. Or maybe he won't even try to get past him and just try to avoid penalties, knowing, of course, if he knows that Padlo Footer's has a 2-second time penalty. I wonder what he'll be doing. But hopefully, for our sake, he'll try and go for a move and spice up the last few laps of the Grand Prix, because as it stands, the battle for the top 3 is pretty much set in stone, and not much happening further behind. Although saying that, Failer is actually gaining on Warren, and I think his medium tyres are really starting to struggle now, so I think we'll be seeing an overtake for P4 as well. So maybe a bit more action than would have expected towards the end of the Grand Prix, but certainly not out in front. Tom is now 6.4 seconds out in front and is just cruising.
Yeah, Tom there comfortably in the lead. No one is bothering him at all, except for maybe the stewards having a close eye on his track limits on the curbs there, not wanting to see him go too far over them. We see right behind him there, or 6 seconds back, we have the battle for second place between Christian and Padlo Footer, slowly evolving. Christian there having a small gap up there, slowly reeling it in and trying to stay within that DRS. And behind them we have Warren and Failer there, just got a bit flustered there by them lapping Paris, that ghosted car. Very unfortunate that we lost him in the early stages of the Grand Prix. But now Jan Failer, he was getting overtaken quite easily earlier in the race, but now he's the one overtaking quite easily. At least at first there, he tried going down the inside with the DRS, but Warren was pushing him hard to the inside, and now he's fighting back at him. Warren there, not wanting to give up that 4th place as easily as Jan Failer did a couple of laps ago now. There's some yellow flags. That is for Michael Tanitza. He's spun over the start-finish straight, I believe. But let's just keep an eye on this battle evolving here. Jan Failer behind Warren once again, but now on to the back straight, the 3rd DRS zone on the track. Failer opens it wide open. Let's see. Warren, the door's open on the inside, but no. Failer decides to just stick back, stay in position for now, and maybe go for the move once they come to the start-finish straight, or down the Anson Boulevard, where we've seen is the primary overtaking spot here at Marina Bay here in Singapore. Of course, there are other places on the track you can overtake, but it is the safest place to do so, since there is quite a wide exit on the right hand side, and you have a nice wide straight down there. It is also a bit easier with the DRS coming into that corner. And now let's see, Warren is under pressure from Failer. Failer almost pushing him through the first couple of corners. Now on to the boulevard there, and Warren loses it completely into the wall. He went there, or did he manage to avoid contact? No, he did not. Lost his right hand side end plate there. Really unfortunate to see from his side. He was doing so well at defending, and then he just threw it all away on the exit of turn number 5 into the wall. He went there after spinning up the rear tyres a bit. And now a battle for 4th place is evolving a bit between Failer and Chrysics, as you can see here onto the Anderson Bridge there. Chrysics close to capping the inside of his right hand side tyre, but you can just see he isn't as close as Failer was to Warren. So this battle might be set in stone and done for now, and for the rest of the Grand Prix on lap 28 out of 31. Further ahead, we still have Padlo Footer's right behind Christian, but seeing as there are very few laps left in this Grand Prix, Padlo Footer's has those 3 seconds worth of time penalties. I don't think he's going to try and make his way past. He has a safe gap behind him, and he would have a very tough time getting past and getting a safe gap in front. So I don't think he's going to try too much. As further behind now, Brownie on Warren into turn number 1 there. Moving up into 6th place, Warren struggling with that end plate loss and probably overheating on the tyres after his half spin, you could call it there. He managed to save it, but still lost quite a bit of time and car performance from it with just a couple of laps to go. Really throwing a lot away from this Grand Prix in just a small mistake. So, as we mentioned a couple of laps ago, anything can happen in this Grand Prix. And, of course, anything can still happen for Tom, although it is looking very nice and easy out in the lead. He's slowly beginning to see that championship emerge out of the fog, slowly beginning to stretch his hand, trying to put his hand onto it, at least his one hand. But there is still some ways to go. He will first have to complete the last 2 laps of this Grand Prix, and then he'll have to stay on top for the last couple of rounds in this championship. It is not over just yet. Not in this Grand Prix, and not for the season either.
Well, I'll make an argument for the Grand Prix. With 2 laps to go, I don't think anyone's catching Tom at the moment. But yeah, it's just been a phenomenal race for Tom and a champion's drive. We'll have to wait and see if he will be the champion at the end of the season. But definitely fully deserved this win. But we definitely have a lot more action than we've had in the last few laps. We've had in the entire race, to be honest. Christian got past Padler Fuentes, and then Failer and Warren had their scrap, and Isaacs and Brownie got ahead of the Red Bull driver who's now coming into the pits, presumably to try and steal that fastest lap off Michael Tinitza, who, speaking of which, is battling away with Scrippy. Although, given the penalty situation, it's not really much of a battle. Scrippy's getting past Michael Tinitza no matter what happens. But yeah, Tinitza just ahead of the Mercedes at the moment. Scrippy, of course, this is obviously not where he would want to be. Obviously fighting for the win not so long ago, and now fighting for 9th place. It's not really a fight, to be honest. It's just a matter of time for when he gets past Tinitza. It looks like those soft tyres have had enough, and he just lets the Mercedes through with no real hesitation there. Scrippy now open to P9. We to say thank you because he did not want any more rampage done to his race. Enough had happened already as we now enter the final lap. Tom has been leading this race from start to finish, and yeah, he's just been absolutely dominant. No one has been able to catch up to him in this Grand Prix. Padlo Futas came close in the opening stint, but of course, he just hasn't had the pace, which is quite interesting because in qualifying he was absolutely rapid, took pole position by a tenth and a bit on the soft tyres, but on these hard, for some reason, his race pace has just not been there, which is unlike him. Padlo Futas has usually been very good in the race, and not so great in qualifying, but it's a complete reverse flip tonight, although saying that he still will get P3 in the Grand Prix, which is still mighty impressive. And he'll definitely be satisfied with the podium, but I don't think anyone will be as satisfied as Tom. It's been one of his easier races. I'm sure he wouldn't admit that, but he has had very little challenge and has seen pretty much no cars in front of him throughout the entire Grand Prix. And in a few moments' time, you'll see the checkered flag and 25 points and a 36-point gap in the championship ahead of him. As he crosses the line, the fireworks light up the sky. Tom wins the Singapore Grand Prix, and as I said, 36 points clear at the top of the championship with 6 races to go. Tom has a blinder, Paris has a stinker. 2 complete opposite sides of the spectrum there as how a Grand Prix can unfold. Tom just what can you say about that race? It's just absolutely dominant. That's all you can say about that. Christian came in P2, Paddler Furious P3, Failer P4, Crisis P5, Josh P6, Brownie P7, Warren will be P8. Well, let's see if he can actually snatch the fastest lap off Michael Tinitzer as he rounds the final few corners to add a point to a very dismal end to that race where he looked on course for P4 at one stage.
I think he will take it.
He does.
He does, yeah.
By quite a margin, so that's 5 points for him. Tribby will come in P9 and Michael Tinitzer will come in P10 if he can manage to avoid any more penalties. Which, well, let's hope he doesn't, because he might be close to disqualification. He's had quite a few penalties this Grand Prix, and yeah.
I think you can
Top
get
wins.
30 seconds before you get disqualified. He tested
Yeah,
that out.
quite lucky for him.
Scrippy just finishing off the race with a penalty. Went a bit too eager on the curbs in the final couple of corners and just a bit too wide. But there we have Michael Tinitzer crossing the line in 10th place, crossed the 9th, fell down to 10th place, taking a single point from today's Grand Prix. Didn't have the best races, but certainly better than what Paris had. And here we have Paris's direct competitor for the championship, spraying that champagne, jumping down from the top step of the podium with Christian and Pablo Futas on his side. Tom can be very happy with that performance. Just absolute dominance, leading from almost lights to flag. Just in the first corner there, he had to get past, and then it was just, as we'd normally say, driving into the sunset, but more like driving into the sunrise, I guess we could say, since it is nighttime here in Singapore. But Tom did very well in this Grand Prix, and took that very well deserved win. Christian and Pablo Futas join him on the podium there. Pablo Futas falling down from first to third. Christian going up from fourth to second. So Christian can also be very proud of that performance. And Pablo Futas, I'm not sure he'll be completely satisfied, even though it is a very nice podium he got.
Yeah, and I mean, Tom has the step in his stride, and moving on to next week, which will be Russia, Tom, no pun intended, will be rushing to try and keep that lead intact, and maybe even extend it even further. But that was a very impressive display from Tom. Didn't make for the most exciting race out in front, but Tom won't give a damn about that. But yeah, moving on to next week, Russia for round 12 as we carry on this continuous streak where we every single race every Sunday until the end of the season. But that was Singapore Grand Prix, obviously the longest race of the season. It did feel quite long, but thankfully at the end we saw some action, and it was enjoyable for the most part. Very interesting to see what the weather was doing, and yeah, we had some nice battles, but in the end, Tom just had the measure of everyone, and yeah, that's what happens when you're the championship leader. You can pull off things like that, and yeah, great result for Tom, and championship leader by 36 points, which will he'll definitely sleep well tonight.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. Taking round for, I believe his total race time was 55 minutes, so a tough one as well for the arms with the force feedback, I can imagine. And I don't think we'll get as high in terms of time, although we're seeing full wet conditions and a safety car every single lap of the race. I think that's the only scenario